Revealed, the incredible journey of a woman who became a new mother to an Apache warrior's baby, in a small Arizona town, where the orange clouds stretch over the desert like vibrant brushstrokes. Sarah's life took a turn she never anticipated. At 26, she was already balancing a waitressing job at the local diner and raising her younger brother, Kyle. The loss of their parents had left a gaping hole in her heart, yet she wore her grief like a badge, resilient and unyielding. Being a waitress was her ticket to survival, serving coffee and plates of pancakes to the regulars who would greet her with familiarity. But amidst the clanking of dishes and chatter, there was Elijah. He was an Apache war veteran with stories that simmered in his soul, and they found solace in each other's shared burden of loss. With each passing hour, their bond deepened. Sarah would lean over to refill his coffee as he spoke about the wild desert nights and the camaraderie that once lifted his spirits. His laughter rang like music, dissolving her sorrow. But tragedy struck one fateful evening, a senseless act during a community defense skirmish that took Elijah's life. The world around her grayed. That precious connection was severed, and Sarah felt the wind knocked from her lungs. In the days that followed, the unthinkable happened. Sarah found herself cradling little Moon, Elijah's abandoned baby daughter, in her arms. The infant, no more than a few months old, looked up at her with wide, trusting eyes, and Sarah felt a fierce protectiveness bloom. It was puzzling, overwhelming. She was a sister and a waitress. Could she really be a mother too? When the local authorities arrived, their faces were somber. They were at a loss. Here was a child with nowhere to go, an infant who deserved love yet who was forgotten in turbulent times. The townspeople rallied around Sarah, providing baby supplies and meals. They brought bright squeaky toys and tender hugs, urging her to care for little Moon. But whispers began to circulate, raising questions about their shared heritage and what it meant for a white woman to raise an Apache child. Anger bubbled beneath the surface of her community, like a snake ready to strike. Neighbors confronted her, insisting that she was stepping over boundaries that should never be crossed. Uncertainty and betrayal surged through her veins. The weight of their judgment felt relentless. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each day had become a tug-of-war between her duties to Kyle and the love she wanted to give little Moon. Sarah often found herself standing on a precipice, torn between the ideals of family and the fears of an uneasy town. As she gazed into little Moon's innocent eyes, she wondered if she could teach her daughter the strength of acceptance in a world that thrived on division. Then, deep within the core of her being, she felt a flicker of hope. Wasn't love, after all, the greatest act of rebellion? But just when Sarah began to soar, an unexpected incident shook the delicate balance once more, and she had to face a choice that could change everything. Would she stand for what was right amidst the storm of dissent? In that moment, the future of all three of them hung in the balance, echoing with unanswered questions that loomed larger than the desert sky above. Sarah's heart raced as she looked down at little Moon, the sun filtering through the window casting a warm glow across the room. The baby cooed softly, her tiny hands reaching for the strands of Sarah's hair. In that moment, the outside world faded. But the peace was short-lived. Suddenly, a loud knock at the door jolted her. Sarah's heart sank. She sensed the weight of tension through the thin wood, the prickle of anxiety shooting through her. With a deep breath, she set little Moon down in her crib, wrapping a soft blanket around the baby. "Stay here, sweet girl," she whispered, hoping to provide some assurance against the storm brewing just outside. As she opened the door, a wave of familiar faces met her. Neighbors she recognized from the diner and school functions, but their expressions were lined with disapproval. One voice held particular weight. Mrs. Thompson, a fierce matriarch of the town, stood at the forefront. Her gray hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her eyes bore the steely resolve of someone who believed they were on the side of righteousness. Sarah, we need to talk, Mrs. Thompson declared, a slight tremor in her voice. This isn't right. You know that, don't you? A lump formed in Sarah's throat. I don't understand. I'm just trying to care for little Moon. Exactly. A white woman raising an Apache child. You don't belong in that role. It's South, not your place. Mrs. Thompson's words were sharp, cutting through the warmth of motherhood Sarah had been clinging to. Fury ignited within Sarah. How could she explain the connection she felt? How could they not see the love? I'm giving her a home. Isn't that what matters? The group stirred, murmurs drifting through the air like dust swirling in the desert sun. Anger swelled beneath the surface as she realized they weren't just challenging her choices, they were digging into her worth. She deserves a mother who loves her. How can you deny that? Mrs. Thompson stepped closer, her gaze penetrating. You're not protecting her. You're putting her in danger. People are talking, Sarah. This isn't just about you or her. It's about our community. The pressure was suffocating. Questions flooded Sarah's mind. Would her love be enough against the weight of cultural divide? Little Moon was an innocent child, a light in the darkness she had known. But was she ready to fight? As if sensing the tension, little Moon began to cry from the crib. The sound broke through the air like thunder, instantaneous and urgent. Sarah rushed back to her, scooping the baby up into her arms. She felt the warmth of little Moon's tiny body and the steady rhythm of her heartbeat against her own. Please, Sarah said, facing the crowd again, this time with a new resolve. I won't let anyone take her from me. I'll fight for her, for us. A moment of silence passed, the faces of her neighbors shifted from anger to something softer, confusion, perhaps even fear of the unknown glinting in their eyes. Sarah felt the tears prick at the corners as she traced little Moon's delicate features with her fingertips. But then Mrs. Thompson's face hardened again. Then you've made your choice. But mark my words, this town will not stand by and let this happen. And with that, they left, leaving behind a charged silence. As the door clicked shut, Sarah clutched little Moon tighter. Something deep inside her stirred a mixture of fear and fierce love. With Kyle still at school and the weight of the world on her shoulders, she knew she had to make a plan. She needed allies, voices that would stand with her. And somewhere far beyond, she felt the echoes of Elijah's spirit urging her on. What would that look like? What risks would she have to take for the sake of little Moon's future? In that moment, she understood this was just the beginning. Would she find the courage to confront not just the town's judgment but her own fears as well? Sarah could already feel the gathering storm, the real battle lay ahead. As she gazed into little Moon's trusting eyes, Sarah whispered, "We're going to be okay. I promise." But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was yet to come. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across Sarah's living room as she sat on the floor, hypnotized by little Moon's tiny fingers grasping at the soft blanket. The quiet coos filled the air, a comforting melody above the thumping pulse of anxiety that now resided in her chest. After the neighbors' confrontation, every corner of the house felt heavy with uncertainty. Sarah had always believed in the strength of a mother's love, but now doubts nestled deep in her mind like unwelcome guests. She clasped little Moon's hand, her heart echoing the tiny girl's innocent wonder. "Okay, sweetheart," she said softly, summoning her resolve. "Let us figure this out together." Sarah leaned back against the sofa, her mind racing through the conversations that had just unfolded. She could hear Mrs. Thompson's voice ringing in her ears, a bitter reminder of the battles ahead. They made it clear that her journey wouldn't just be about passing love between mother and child, it would be a test of community, all eyes trained on her every choice. With little Moon nestled against her, Sarah narrowed her thoughts. First, she would need to seek help. There had to be those within the community who would understand, who might share her love for the child. The image of Elijah burst into her mind, how he fought for the things he loved fiercely, never backing down even when facing overwhelming odds. Maybe it was time to find those who knew him, those who understood Little Moon's heritage better than she ever could. The noise from outside distracted her. In the distance, children laughed and played, their voices light and free. Breath catching in her throat, Sarah wondered how many of them would still welcome her. Would the whispers follow her through the streets? Focusing again on Little Moon, she brushed her thumb along the baby's cheek. "We're going to find your family," she whispered. "You're not just my little girl, you come from a legacy of strength and courage." She grabbed her phone and searched through her contacts for the number she hadn't dialed in months. It belonged to Rachel, a distant friend who had roots in the Apache community. Rachel was not just a familiar face, she was Elijah's cousin, a link to the legacy Little Moon deserved. Sarah hesitated, fingers hovering above the screen. Would she understand? Would she be angry about Sarah raising her cousin's child? But she had to try. The stakes were too high to hold on to fear. She pressed the call button, her heart thumping loudly in her chest. "Hello." Rachel answered, her voice warm yet guarded. "It's Sarah," she said, pushing past the tightness in her throat. "I need to talk to you. It's about Little Moon." Silence hung between them, and Sarah wondered if she should be waited. "What about her?" Rachel asked, her tone shifting, cautious. "I know this is a lot," but Sarah felt the weight of her emotions choke her words. "I'm trying to do the best I can. But people, they don't understand how much I love her, and they're judging us." A long pause followed, and Sarah felt the tension building. She anticipated the indignation, the rejection. But then Rachel sighed, sounding more like a sister than a distant cousin. "Let us meet. I want to know everything. We'll figure this out, okay?" Relief flooded through Sarah, a rush of hope, mingling with her lingering fears. "Thank you. Thank you so much." As they hung up, she cradled Little Moon tightly, a mix of trepidation and fear slipping away. This was more than a venture for help, it was the start of a journey toward understanding and acceptance, climbing the knots of entwined legacies. But as she secured the baby against her chest, Sarah heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching her door. A new urgency prickled at the back of her mind. Did the townsfolk return for another confrontation? Her pulse quickened as she gently swayed Little Moon, murmuring calming words. No matter who it was, she had to stand firm in her resolve. She walked to the door, ready to embrace whatever came next. Who would be waiting on the other side? Would they bring more judgment or unexpected allies? Sarah steadied her breath and pressed her ear against the door. The footsteps paused momentarily, a soft rustling followed by the sound of a heavy knock. Her heart raced. Who could it be? With Little Moon cradled protectively against her chest, she turned the knob and opened the door, bracing herself for impact. Standing there was a tall woman, her dark hair cascading in waves around her shoulders. Rachel. Sarah's relief was palpable, but the look in Rachel's eyes spoke of urgency and concern. "Can I come in?" Rachel asked, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone else to appear. Sarah stepped aside, allowing Rachel to enter. "Thank you for coming," she said, closing the door softly behind them. "I've been so worried, I know." Rachel's voice was steady, but the weight of their reality settled heavily in the air. "We need to talk about everything. I could hear it in your voice." They settled in the living room, where the sun began to dip low, casting golden rays through the window. Sarah positioned Little Moon in her arms, and Rachel immediately reached out to touch the baby's delicate hand. "She's beautiful, Sarah," Rachel whispered, awe coloring her tone. "And you are doing an amazing job." "Am I?" Sarah asked, doubt slipping back into her mind. "There's so much pressure. The neighbors, they're not kind. They see me as an outsider." Rachel's expression hardened. "I know how that feels. But Little Moon deserves to know her story too. She deserves to be part of her culture." Sarah's heart tugged at the words. "You mean I can't just keep her here?" "It's about more than just keeping her safe, Sarah. It's about her identity. You're raising her alone, but you're not alone in this. There's a community that will embrace you both. The idea enveloped Sarah in warmth, yet it also frightened her. What will they think of me? They could see me as an intruder. No, Rachel said, shaking her head. You will face skepticism, sure, but if you are honest about your feelings and your intentions, they'll see what I see: a mother who cares deeply for this child. And what if they don't accept us? What if they push us away? Sarah's voice trembled, the fear clawing at her heart. Rachel leaned forward, her eyes fierce. People don't understand what they don't know. We need to break those barriers. We need to show them the love you have for Little Moon. Love crosses boundaries. It builds bridges. Sarah's heart raced at the thought, her mind reeling. Could they bridge the gap? Could she cultivate a family for Little Moon and herself? Just then, Little Moon stirred, her tiny hand reaching outward as if sensing the weight of the discussion. Rachel smiled softly. She feels it. The power of connection. Rachel's words echoed with a hopeful rhythm, filling Sarah with a glint of courage. What should I do? Start by introducing her to the community. Invite them here, let them see the beautiful bond you share. You need to open those doors. And I'll help you. I promise. As Rachel spoke, Sarah felt the knot in her chest slowly unravel. Maybe this was the answer. Maybe they could truly weave themselves into the community, but outside, a car engine rumbled to life, cutting through their conversation. Sarah walked toward the window, her brow furrowing. A group of people was gathered at the end of the street, casting sideways glances toward her home. What are you thinking? Rachel asked, following Sarah's gaze. I think Sarah hesitated, feeling a surge of uncertainty. We need to act fast. If they see me with Little Moon. What happens next? Rachel's hand rested gently on Sarah's shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. No matter what they think, you need to show your strength. For her. But as Sarah prepared to confront the stares of the curious crowd, something else tugged at her: the feeling that revelations about her and Little Moon were only just beginning. What truths lay ahead, waiting to be discovered? As she stepped outside, heart pounding, Sarah realized the journey was only starting, not just to find acceptance, but to forge a future that felt like a home. How would they react? When she stepped into the light, holding the key to a legacy that bound them all together? Stepping onto the porch, Sarah felt the cool evening air embrace her. The crowd at the end of her street seemed to shift, their whispers blending with the rustling leaves. Each glance stung, each murmur echoed in her head. She could feel the weight of their judgment before she even spoke. Maybe we should reconsider, she blurted out, doubt creeping back in like an old friend. Rachel stepped closer, her eyes fierce and determined. No, Sarah. You've come too far to back down now. You have every right to be here. You are Little Moon's mother. She needs you to be brave. The words ignited something inside Sarah. She had always thought bravery belonged to others: warriors, adventurers, or those who faced down adversity head-on. But as she stood there, with her baby bundled in her arms, she understood what Rachel meant. This was her battle, forged not in the fires of violence but in love. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped down the final few stairs and across the lawn. As she approached the group, she noticed familiar faces among the crowd: people she'd seen at the grocery store and the park, those whose eyes quickly looked away when she caught them staring. Hi, she started, her voice steady but soft. I'm Sarah, and this is Little Moon. Holding her daughter out a little, she felt a strange pulse of courage. A few murmurs reached her ears, uncertainty and skepticism woven into the feel of the air. Then, one face stepped forward. It was Mrs. Otis, a woman she had seen several times at the market. Is that? Mrs. Otis hesitated, her voice trailing off. Yes, Rachel interjected, stepping beside Sarah like a shield. This is the daughter of an Apache warrior. Sarah has opened her home and heart to her. She deserves our support. Sarah could feel the weight of Mrs. Otis's gaze on her, searching for something validation or rejection, perhaps. The whispers grew louder, and Sarah's heart raced. She thought of the love she felt for Little Moon, the battles she had encountered since bringing her home, and something clicked. She deserves to know who she is, Sarah said, more to herself than to anyone around. And I want to share that with you. I want her to be part of this community. A moment of silence settled in the air, stretching like a taut string about to snap. Then Frank, a gruff man who had often stood at a distance, spoke up. What do you know of her story? How can you teach her? Sarah inhaled sharply. I am still learning. I can't promise to know everything, but I can promise to teach her the love and honor her culture deserves. And I'd love to share that journey with all of you. The group exchanged glances, skeptical but curious. Little Moon nestled against Sarah, as if sensing the weight of the conversation. Some faces softened, shifting from suspicion to contemplation. Heartbeats synchronized in the quiet pause. What do we need to see her culture? Another voice called out. Meet us at the community center this weekend, Rachel said, taking charge, her voice ringing with confidence. There will be stories, dances, and an open invitation for anyone who wants to learn. Together, we can honor Little Moon's heritage. With that, the crowd seemed to thaw, whispers becoming moments of excitement, anticipation sprouting where there had only been wariness. Sarah felt a wave of hope wash over her. Maybe this was the welcome she dared to dream of. As they turned to leave, she felt a tug on her jacket. It was Rachel, her eyes shining. You did it, Sarah. This is just the beginning. But as Sarah glanced back at the group, a sliver of unease snaked around her heart. Was this enough? Did they truly want to embrace them both? Or was it only a truce, temporary and fragile? Determined, she pulled Little Moon closer. They would find out, for this was only the first step in a long, unpredictable journey. What other challenges awaited them at the community center? And would they truly find a place they could call home? The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting warm light across the town like a gentle embrace. Sarah felt the first rays through her window and the weight of the day ahead settled on her shoulders. She wrapped Little Moon tighter in a soft blanket and sat on the edge of her bed, a swell of emotions filling her chest. Today was the day. The community center would be buzzing with people, each either eager to learn or still unsure of where they stood. She thought of the faces she had seen the night before, ones filled with doubt, and a few glimmers of warmth. Would any of them come? Would they really show up to embrace Little Moon's Apache heritage alongside her? Rachel arrived early, bursting into the room with a basket of snacks, fruit and cookies, a small offering for whoever came. You ready? She asked, her enthusiasm warming the space. As they prepared, Sarah's mind raced. The vibrant colors of the Apache culture danced behind her eyelids. Traditional stories, music that carried the rhythm of the earth, dances that told tales of the spirits, all of it belonged to Little Moon. But would it resonate with others? Honestly? No, Sarah confessed, her voice wavering. Rachel stopped, concern flickering in her eyes. What if they come and realize they don't want to be part of our journey? What if I fail to show them what it means? Rachel took a deep breath, her expression steady. You won't fail. Just share your heart. That's what matters. She placed a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder, and for the first time that morning, Sarah smiled back. It felt like hope. As they approached the community center, anticipation buzzed in the air. Sarah's heart raced. What if no one came? She took a deep breath and opened the door, revealing a bright room filled with chairs arranged in a semicircle. Wow, look at this! Rachel exclaimed, spotting the colorful decorations, a mix of Apache symbols and community art. Sarah felt a flicker of pride surge within her. We can do this, she thought. Minutes passed, each tick of the clock seeming to taunt her. Just when Sarah felt she might crumble beneath the weight of uncertainty, familiar faces trickled through the door. First was Mrs. Otis, then Frank, followed by a few families from the neighborhood. Each welcome smile sent warmth flooding through Sarah. "Let us get started," Rachel called as she took her place at the front, reveling in the moment. The voices quieted, and an air of expectancy hung between them. Sarah stepped up, her palms slightly sweaty, and held little Moon in her arms. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "I know this may seem new to some of you, but it's important for me to share my daughter's culture with you. She deserves to know her roots and for all of us to learn together." A murmur rippled through the group, an echo of curiosity and acceptance. Sarah decided to take the plunge. "I'd like to tell you a story," she announced, her voice gaining strength as it resonated in the room. As she began to speak, she felt connected, no longer just a mother stepping into the unknown. The narratives flowed from her heart, each word dripping with history and emotion. By the time she finished, the room was alive with questions and laughter. Kids darted around playing traditional games. Adults sat, their expressions reflecting a blend of awe and vulnerability. Maybe they weren't just accepting little Moon, they were embracing her, bit by bit, yet just as the mood lifted, Sarah still sensed an underlying tension lurking in the room. What hidden concerns lay beneath the surface? Would distrust creep back into their hearts? As she watched the community gradually warm to her, Rachel joined her side. "This is amazing," she said, her eyes glittering with excitement. Sarah felt a tug of gratitude but also worry. But what if this isn't enough? What if they only accept her here, but not in their lives outside these walls? The question hung between them, and as Sarah turned back to the crowd, she felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her chest. Would the invitation to share stories build true bridges, or were they just dipping their toes in shallow waters? Little Moon stirred, her tiny fingers grasping Sarah's shirt, as if sensing the weight of her mother's thoughts. In that moment, Sarah realized this was about more than just today, it was the beginning of building something more significant. But what obstacles still lay ahead? And as the laughter swirled around her, the question echoed, would love be strong enough to withstand what was yet to come? As Sarah looked out at the faces gathered before her, hope and trepidation battled inside her. The energy in the room was palpable, laughter blended with the soft rustle of little Moon's blanket, grounding her in this moment. Yet, her heart ached with the weight of her fear. Would acceptance be more than just a fleeting smile shared at the community center? The thought lingered like a whisper in the back of her mind. What if they all returned to their daily lives, unwilling to carry the lessons learned today? Burdened with worry, she glanced down at little Moon. Her daughter cooed softly, blissfully unaware of the unspoken pressure around them. Rachel clapped her hands, breaking Sarah's train of thought. "Let us form a circle," she suggested with her usual enthusiasm. The group shifted, chairs scraping across the floor, everyone eager to engage. Sarah held her breath, feeling the tension in the air. Would they truly immerse themselves in the heritage she was desperately trying to share? Soon, the circle was formed, and Rachel began introducing the group to Apache songs. The rhythm filled the room, a solid beat that echoed off the walls. People inched closer, curiosity kindling their spirits. Sarah watched, her heart swelling when Mrs. Otis began to clap along to the rhythm, her face beaming with joy as the music swelled. Sarah decided it was time to reveal a piece of her heart, a story tied tightly to the Apache upbringing she wanted for little Moon. "I want to tell you about the star teachings," she announced, her voice steady, the familiar narrative luring her into comfort. She spoke of the stars that guided her ancestors through dark nights, how each constellation told a story, ancient and profound. The people in front of her leaned in, captivated. She felt the warmth of connection grow. This wasn't just about sharing culture, it was about building a tapestry woven with understanding and love. When she finished, a ripple of applause spread across the room, and soon they were all talking excitedly. Children clamored to hear more, adults exchanged smiles, and Sarah felt as if her fears were beginning to melt away. Little Moon giggled, her laughter echoing in synchronicity with the joy around them, but just as the warmth enveloped her, a sharp voice cut through the laughter. "This is all very nice, but are we really going to change anything? It was frank, his brows furrowed, skepticism tangible. How do we ensure this isn't just a one-time thing? That question hung heavy in the air, provoking murmurs of agreement. Sarah's heart sank, doubts creeping back in. What if today did become merely a memory? Rachel stepped forward. It starts with us. Each of us can carry this forward. It's not about today alone, it's about the commitment we make from here on out. An unseen weight lifted from Sarah. Rachel was right, it was about the shared journey ahead, the steps they would take together as a community. Yes. We could perhaps host monthly gatherings or workshops. Sarah said, emboldened by Rachel's words. We can open our doors to each other, to learning and sharing experiences. The room buzzed with chatter, ideas blossoming like wildflowers in spring. They traded stories, each voice adding to the chorus building around Little Moon. Sarah's heart soared, maybe, just maybe, they could create something lasting, but as the day wore on, uncertainty tinged her excitement. Would these sentiments hold when the shine of today wore off? As laughter bubbled in the air, Sarah locked eyes with Frank again. His expression still carried doubt, yet she sensed a flicker of consideration. What if he wasn't completely closed off to change? The session drew to a close, and members began volunteering for roles in future gatherings. Hope flickered, yet it could still vanish in the shadows of skepticism. Sarah contemplated her next steps as they exchanged hugs and promises, the community feeling almost like family, a family forged in the fires of hope. Just as Sarah turned to leave, she felt a light tug on her skirt. Little Moon grasped a small piece of ribbon from the decorations, her eyes sparkling brightly. In that brief moment, something shifted in Sarah. She realized the journey they were on wasn't just about being accepted as Apache, it was about growth, connection, and the possibility of healing. Together, she whispered to Little Moon as they walked toward the door, we'll face whatever comes. Yet as she pulled the door open, the fleeting warmth in her heart wrestled with a new realization. How would they nurture this transformation in everyday life? What struggles awaited them beyond this moment? Would the community truly be ready to embrace their commitment, or was this just a momentary flash of inspiration? And with that, the questions enveloped her once more, intimate yet daunting. The path ahead shimmered uncertainly in her mind. What would they do next? As they stepped outside, the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden glow across the community center. Sarah felt the weight of Little Moon in her arms, a tangible reminder of the life she was forging in the midst of uncertainty. The laughter and excitement from the gathering fluttered like distant butterflies in her mind. Could that energy carry on? Could they sustain this momentum? Just then, Rachel came rushing out after her. Hey! I've been thinking about the ideas we tossed around. What if we reached out to some of the local schools? Get kids involved with cultural storytelling and activities. Her eyes sparkled with animated enthusiasm, and Sarah couldn't help but share in her excitement. Yeah. That sounds great. Sarah replied, a rush of hope filling her chest. We can design workshops that connect them more deeply to the stories and history. Maybe even have an art project where they create something inspired by the star teachings. But as they talked, Frank's doubt loomed heavily like a thundercloud. That prick of skepticism gnawed at her for a moment. What if the kids were only interested for a short while? What if the schools weren't receptive? And what about the parents? Sarah said, drawing in a deep breath. We need to ensure they're on board too. Rachel nodded vigorously. We start small. We focus on making this a real partnership between families. It'll be a collaborative effort. As they brainstormed, Sarah spotted Mrs. Otis wandering towards them, her colorful shawl billowing gently in the evening breeze. I heard what you've planned. She called out, her voice warm and inviting. Count me in. I want to help. Absolutely. Sarah felt the surge of encouragement lift her spirits. Each new voice added to the chorus of hope that wrapped around them. Mrs. Otis joined their conversation, her ideas flowing. We could host a nature day. Invite families to share stories while we explore the outdoors. It could be a wonderful way to connect with both nature and heritage. The three women fell into a rhythm of excited discussion, each idea crafted with care and love. The prospect of embracing their heritage, while involving the broader community, felt more like a reality with every word exchanged. Yet, in the back of Sarah's mind, a twinge of anxiety lingered. How could they keep this going? How to follow through? The following week, armed with paper and colored pencils, they gathered around a worn table at Rachel's home, sketching out plans for their first workshop. As they discussed logistics and divided responsibilities, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something significant. Just when she felt ready to dive back into the excitement, the door creaked open. A tall figure stepped inside Frank. The air tightened around them, anticipation crackling. "I want to help," he said hesitantly, his hands stuffed deep into his pockets. The invitation hung in the air, a mix of surprise and hope washing over the gathering. "We can use all the hands we can get," Rachel replied, her smile warm but cautious. "How do we ensure we don't just talk about it?" Frank pressed, his serious demeanor masked under a veil of determination. Sarah admired his honesty. His skepticism might just help them sharpen their focus. A collective breath filled the room. Sarah locked eyes with him. "We need to set measurable goals. We can't just hope for change, we need to fight for it every step of the way." In that moment, Sarah's heart raced. This was not just about sharing culture anymore. It had shifted into a movement, a transformative journey for them all. But deep inside, doubt whispered. Was Frank's involvement a signal of broader acceptance, or would it lead to more challenges? How could they bridge the gap between intention and action, especially if doubts rose again? As the evening stretched on, shimmers of possibility danced in the air, mingling with the questions. Sarah looked around the table. She saw commitment, she saw fear, but most importantly, she saw hope. Where would their conversation lead them next? And would they be ready for what lay ahead? With a mix of excitement and uncertainty, the group dove deeper into brainstorming. The papers on the table were filled with notes and doodles, each scribble a testament to their dreams. Outside, the sun set, painting the walls with an orange hue that felt almost like a promise, a powerful reminder of what they were trying to achieve. Frank leaned in closer, arms crossed tightly as if attempting to ward off any lingering doubts. "So, what kind of activities are we thinking for the kids?" he asked. His tone was serious, but Sarah could sense he was genuinely interested. Rachel spoke first, her hands animatedly gesturing as she shared her vision. "We could do storytelling sessions, where the kids learn the old legends from our culture. We can combine that with role play, maybe some costumes. They'll get to live the stories." The thought invigorated Sarah. She imagined children dressed as heroes, voices ringing out in laughter and excitement. But then a shadow crossed her thoughts. What if they don't connect with it? She said, her voice barely above a whisper. What if they just see it as another dull school activity? Mrs. Otis's gaze locked onto Sarah, simmering with resolve. "That's why we focus on making it personal. You can share your own experiences and tie in your family's stories. Kids respond to relationships they learn through connection." Sarah could feel a pulse of hope rising in her chest. The weight of anxiety lightened just a little, but the flicker of doubt still lingered, nagging at her. She needed assurance, something that would take the edge off that fear coursing through her. "Okay, let us do this," Frank said, breaking the moment of hesitation. "Let us create a strategy. We need to write down clear goals, who we want to reach, what we want them to learn, and a timeline." They huddled around the table, each drawing from their experiences to shape their plan. With each idea, Sarah felt the energy shift from tentative to exhilarating. The excitement of it all was palpable, igniting their spirits. They began to envision community gatherings, children learning and laughing together, connecting to their roots in ways they hadn't before. Hours slipped by unnoticed, and as they wrapped up, they laid out their tasks. Sarah could feel a sense of unity, but also the undercurrent of responsibility settling on her shoulders. This was their dream, and there was no backing down now. Stepping outside afterwards, the night air was cool and fresh. Sarah paused, her heart heavy with questions. What if we can't pull this off? She whispered, more to herself than to the group. Rachel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll figure it out together. We're doing this not just for us, but for those kids. They deserve to know their stories, they deserve a voice. That's what matters. In that moment, Sarah understood the gravity of what they were doing. It wasn't just about sharing culture, it was about weaving it into the fabric of the community. But just as the warmth of hope wrapped around her, another thought crept in, chilling her resolve. What if the community didn't support them? What if they faced pushback rather than acceptance? With the uncertainty pulsing beneath the surface, Sarah realized they had just begun to scrape the surface of change. This journey could be filled with obstacles and heartaches, but in the depths of her fears, she felt a determination blooming. As they parted ways that night, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility on her heart. She gazed at the stars that twinkled above, feeling as if they were cheering her on. What lay ahead was still unclear, but one thing was certain, they were no longer alone in this. The next morning, Sarah would need to step out and rally support from parents and educators, a daunting task that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, uncertain of the leap. Would her courage hold? Would her vision resonate with those they aimed to inspire? The questions swirled as the dawn approached, leaving her wondering how far they could go and what challenges they'd have to face to make this dream a reality. The community center buzzed with energy, filled with laughter and the rhythms of children's voices. Sarah stood at the entrance, clutching little Moon tight against her chest, the warmth radiating from the baby infusing her with courage. Today marked a new beginning, a genuine attempt to blend their worlds and embrace the journey ahead. Rachel arrived, a smile lighting up her face. Are you ready? She asked, her excitement palpable. Sarah nodded, feeling the flutter of hope swell within her. She looked around to see familiar faces gathering, neighbors, friends, and even a few skeptics. Each smile felt like an invitation, a cue that maybe, just maybe, acceptance was within reach. As they settled in, Sarah stood alongside Rachel, her heart racing like a summer storm. Each child's innocent smile was a reminder of what they were fighting for. Thank you all for coming, she started, her voice steadier than she felt. Today is about unity, love, and sharing our stories. With Rachel at her side, they opened the floor to storytelling. As she narrated her first story about the stars, how each one held a tale, a fragment of history, Sarah felt a ripple of connection. Children leaned in, captivated, eyes wide with wonder as she painted pictures of distant galaxies and ancient ancestors. The atmosphere shifted, and with every shared story, barriers crumbled. Parents began to engage, asking questions about the Apache culture, wanting to learn alongside their children. Sarah's chest swelled with pride, that immense love she felt for little Moon blossoming into something larger, a sense of community. But then, out of the corner of her eye, she spotted Frank, the old skepticism still mingling with curiosity. He stood cautiously on the edge, observing but not quite ready to join. The nagging worry seeped back in, whispering doubts about lasting acceptance. Just as she was about to turn back to the crowd, Frank stepped forward, breaking his silence. I've been thinking. What if we set up more events like this? A way to keep these discussions going? To show that this isn't just a one-time thing. There, in the vibrant mix of laughter, hope ignited anew. Sarah felt the stirrings of change, the potential for a real bond to form. Yes! She exclaimed, sensing the energy shift again, hearts resonating with a common goal. Let us create a cultural calendar, where we host workshops, storytelling sessions, and even art displays. With that, they dove into planning, and suddenly, the community center felt alive, buzzing with enthusiasm. Each voice added to the momentum, breaking into laughter and excitement, transgressing the weight of past judgments. Little Moon gurgled happily, feeding off the easy atmosphere, a reminder of the innocence they were fighting to protect. As the day wound down, Sarah could feel the seeds of unity being planted. As neighbors chatted amongst themselves, sharing ideas and suggestions, a revelation swept over her. Families were no longer just accepting their presence, they were embracing it, a true blending of heritage. Later that evening, as they gathered to conclude the day's events, Mrs. Otis approached Sarah, her eyes filled with sincerity. "You've done something beautiful here, Sarah. I see the love you have for little Moon. She belongs here." Tears of joy welled in Sarah's eyes. This was the validation she had yearned for. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice catching on the emotion swelling in her throat. In that moment, Sarah understood something profound. Love had bridged the vast divides between cultures, between fears, and between hearts. What had once felt like an insurmountable challenge now appeared as a tapestry woven from understanding, connection, and hope. As she walked toward the car, little Moon nestled against her. Sarah breathed in the warm evening air. She felt a lightness in her heart, the sunlight dipping low on the horizon, a reflection of the possibilities ahead. The journey was far from over, but now it felt vibrant with potential. They had found allies, opened hearts, and created a nurturing space for love and acceptance. Together, they had begun crafting a legacy of unity that would transcend generations, a safe harbor for little Moon. From this day forward, Sarah whispered to her daughter as she gently kissed little Moon's forehead, "We will face everything together. We will always choose love." And as the stars began to twinkle in the vast Arizona sky above them, Sarah knew they wouldn't just survive, they would thrive, forging a new path with each determined step they took together. Now, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. You need to subscribe now, because only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.